A date which will live in infamy.
To a growing number of Americans, history books and scratchy film footage are what we know of World War II. Those who lived through it, those who struggled and sacrificed, shrink in number with each passing day. Yet World War II remains a pivotal point of the 20th century, one that deserves considered study as better times prevail. Along with the rest of the nation, World War II sent East Tennessee into a prolonged state of emergency. The war drank deeply of our human reservoir. Those on the edge of adulthood were pulled into the very center of the storm. We hear about those changes in the words of those who lived it. Among them, a Sharps Chapel farm boy, a carefree college co-ed, an African-American tank gunner, and a Loudon clerk turned shipbuilder. And an entire town turns out to aid a trainload of new recruits tragically delayed in Jellicoe. I'm Bill Landry, and we explore East Tennessee in World War II, the awakening on Heartland Tonight.
It's the best of the Heartland Series with Bill Landry on Heartland Tonight.
Tennessee is calling, rolling hills all dressed in green. Hear the heartland calling like an Appalachian spring. Smoky Mountain night is falling. The heartland's calling me, calling me.
The Southern Railway Depot in Knoxville. Its walls keep silent, momentous passage. None more than what happened in the 1940s. Hundreds of young men boarded here to go to war. Restless, uncertain, maybe scared. They nevertheless answered the call. The train's boarding platform was crowded and tears were shed. World War II absolutely dominated the lives of recruits. Those left behind were equally swept up. Ordinary people's expectations out of life changed. Opportunities opened or were closed. They bolstered a can-do spirit, sacrificed, then picked up and went on. How the times changed East Tennesseans can be seen through the recollections of four individuals.
Pearl Harbor was December the 7th, 1941. It didn't mean too much then. That's just the Japanese had bombed a place in Hawaii, you know, at Pearl Harbor I'd never heard of.
I'll never forget it. I was outside, was pitching a ball, and my dad come to the door and told us. We come in the house, and of course the radio was blaring that, you know.
A date which will live in infamy.
That afternoon, my uncle called us and said, you know, they're recruiting people to come to Seattle to work, said, in the shipyards. And said, you better come, so we went.
There were 3 boys to 1 girl at the University of Tennessee at that time, so everybody had lots of dates. The boys had to go to the Army office or the Navy office or wherever they went and register for service. We were a bustling college on the hill, and then all of a sudden there was nobody there. We grew up.
The peacetime draft started in 1940, inducted thousands of Tennesseans, among them Luther Woods.
I've never been nowhere. I was just raised on a farm and then come to town and went to work at Kern's Bakery, and that's as far as I'd ever been anywhere when I went into the Army. I can't say that I wanted to go, but I didn't try to get out. I thought it was my duty. I'd never been out of the state of Tennessee at 18 years old.
A culture clash was inevitable.
We was all from Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. Well, the people on the next block from us was from New York, up north. And we couldn't go to the PX at the same time without getting into a fight. Tennessee people didn't like Yankees. They're overbearing.
Al Crow was one of the producers of a metal to build airplanes and ships and whatnot. So I got deferred twice, and so in 1942, that was it. They drafted me. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what they was going to do with us once we got there.
Were you in an all-black outfit?
All black. Well, we knew that they were training us to go to war. you know. But to me, a lot of us felt like we were sent out there to get killed.
And I carried a testament, and I had a bulletproof cover on it. It was live or die. It's up to you. Take care of yourself or walk out there and get killed. Because they didn't care to shoot you. Them people over there didn't.
We lost an awfully lot of my generation, and we were terribly sad about it, and yet we were very patriotic. Everything was, let's win this war.
The continuation of the awakening, East Tennessee in World War II, when Heartland Tonight continues.
We were pushed into this as young people, and we did not know what was happening to us, you might say, so we survived.
You just went from a boy to a man right fast.
American youth of the 1940s did not expect their destiny to be war. It altered their expectations of life. Some became different people because of World War II. Understanding that fades with time, except when we pause to listen. Four East Tennesseans tell us about the awakening World War II brought to their lives. Shipped to England at 19, Luther Woods left all that was familiar.
Well, I just wondered if I'd ever get there or not. Because you take 3,000 miles of water is a long ways to swim back. I'd never met anybody from England that I knowed of till we got over there.
Foreign cultures contrasted Luther's to the very roots.
They farmed different from the way we did. Yeah, I like to watch them plow with them old oxens and that yoke, you know. It was fun to me, knowing what pretty harness we had for mules and stuff back here to work with.
Well, I just finished high school, and I started working in the Grubbs Variety Store when the war hit. I made $12 a week.
It didn't take much to convince Dorothy Kiggins that opportunity lay west of Lenoir City, shipbuilding in Seattle.
They said, well, we need some electricians. You do that? I said, yes. I don't know any of it, but they sent me to school all my life. I just worn dress. They didn't, just didn't believe in girls wearing pants. And so I got some men's coveralls. Electricians all had yellow hard hats. A bunch of the men painted Tennessee across the top of it. It taught me that I could do things that I didn't know I could, and did a good job at it. Because in 3 months I had my journeyman's rating, which means I couldn't go any higher unless they made a boss out of me. They wasn't going to do that.
World War II set forth change for how black Americans were treated by the military. Soldiers like Melvin Valentine paved the way.
Some of those white officers were very prejudiced, so they got rid of them. Eventually they started bringing the black officers.
Still, the soldiers, part of the 2nd Black Tank Battalion, had to prove themselves.
In the training, excessive drilling. Normally you go to the infiltration course, you would say maybe once or twice. But we were doing it every other week. I don't know whether they were just testing us to see whether or not we would be able to stand up to it.
At home in Knoxville, war news, though censored, was an abrupt awakening.
I remember going to the Tennessee Theater. My husband was on the one that I married was on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific, and we were watching the newsreel, and they had this horrible typhoon, and 2 of the aircraft carriers turned tail and went down right there in front of us on the silver screen, and that was pretty panicky because you didn't know which ones they were.
Instead of boundless hope and expectation, the youth of the 40s faced instead profound uncertainty. But it pulled a nation together.
That's unbelievable that the country could be so united.
In World War II, there are many stories from abroad and here at home. Jellicoe, Tennessee still recalls the fateful day a trainload full of young recruits needed their help when Heartland Tonight returns. In war, there are many heroes. The town of Jellicoe joined those ranks when Troop Train 47 took a tragic turn. 4th of July, 1944 is both a celebration of peace and a reminder of war. D-Day is fresh on everyone's mind. War's end seems a possibility, yet the dark cloud lingers. Young boys still go to war. A train leaves Indianapolis, Indiana with new recruits bound for basic training at Camp Cross, South Carolina. The route takes the troop train through Jellicoe, Tennessee.
Well, I'd been a-courting that night, that day and that evening, and I just got back home right at dark. I stopped around the road there about a half a mile from the house and watched this train come through. Everybody got out and watched every troop train that came through here and waved at the boys.
At 9 p.m., L&N number 47 runs 8 hours late. Loaded with recruits like Dick Stogler of Ohio, the train heads into the Clear Fork River Gorge.
That train was rocking. I mean, the guy was coming around these hills here. It seemed to me like way too fast. Well, we just heard a loud bang, and that was it.
In a curve, the engine jumps the rails and pulls 5 cars with it into the river. A 6th car sits burning on the edge. Confusion swirls around a 7th car with Dick Stogler in it.
We could hear the river. I couldn't see it. It was dark.
The engineer was pinned under the water. His hair was waving at the surface.
The rescuers work quickly. Through the night, the volunteers bring the injured and the dead out of the wreckage. 16-year-old Jim Tidwell calms one soldier trapped deep within the rail cars.
I talked to him different times through the night and tied a string to a canteen and dropped him water down in there. And it must have been 4 or 5 o'clock that morning when he was finally freed. Somebody gave him a cigarette and lit it, and he dropped dead. He died right on the spot after he was freed. Never knowed his name. I don't know if I ever asked him or not.
Among the many local heroes, newlyweds Charlie and Cleta Roberts stop to help. They never make their honeymoon in Gatlinburg. Harold Moon burns through the mass of metal with his acetylene torch. Dr. Ned Watts ministers to the injured at the overflowing Jellicoe Hospital till other doctors could arrive on the scene. Mrs. Queener takes in 2 survivors for the night. 50 years later, she still treasures letters from her boys.
Dear Mr. and Miss Queener, in these few words I will never be able to express myself or show my appreciation on this paper. Thanking you and the people of Jellicoe again for the greatest of cooperation you gave to us and the welcome we got from your homes. And it's signed a soldier, Estill M. McGaffey.
War is a journey of death marked by tears and heroism. The battlefield isn't the only stop on the journey. World War II thrust soldiers and civilians both into unfamiliar situations and places. Private Luther Woods marched with Patton's Third Army at Utah Beach, the Battle of the Bulge, and on to the outskirts of Berlin. This program is dedicated to his memory.
This was one time that the United States was together.
All able to fight and work answered the call to World War II. Many were just beginning life as adults. On the home front and on the front lines, what 4 East Tennesseans encountered inevitably changed them. One casualty, the innocence of youth.
I never was afraid to go out here and go a-hunting or anything. I wasn't afraid of somebody shooting me. But over there, when you walked out of that boat onto the beach, you were looking at get killed any minute.
Private Luther Woods adapted to the horrors of war. This new Sentinel photo shows Luther leading German prisoners. He played no favorites. Where'd you get that pistol?
I took that pistol off of a German general that I took as a prisoner, And he wanted to trade it to me for cigarettes, and I told him we didn't have no cigarettes. I took his gun and kicked his butt and sent him on down the road. Yeah, you changed because you didn't know what was going to happen before you got back.
Private Melvin Valentine was a tank gunner in the Black Panthers, the first black tank battalion sent to Europe. Dependent on each other, racial lines faded.
The outfits had congealed to the extent where we got along beautifully, you know what I mean? It's white and black. We had given them the support that they needed at the time they needed it. It was very charming. They'd never seen a black soldier except, you know, if he was in the quartermaster corps where you carried the supplies. The SS trooper would expound to us time and time again, you know, while we were there. Why would you be fighting for a country that treated you the way they treat you?
A common goal dissolved the prisoners' taunts.
We were fighting for our cause.
The shipyards of Seattle represented a good income and travel to a Lenore City girl. When opportunity knocked, Dorothy Kiggins answered.
We knew everything that was going, we did it.
The sights of Vancouver included shopping because shoes weren't rationed in Canada.
And we'd come back and we'd sit on the steps outside the hotel and scrape our feet back and forth, you know, to look like they'd been worn, and have a whole suitcase full of shoes with the bottom just roughed up a little bit. I never changed after I come back. I didn't go back to the going barefooted.
On a ship's test run, Dorothy bypassed the men's-only code.
We had worked on that, done all the electrical stuff, and we knew these guys were going to be out there checking, and we thought, well, that's not fair. The men are going, and we're not going.
She was a stowaway.
And we waited till we got out far enough we knew they couldn't bring us back. I would never have done anything like that in Tennessee, that's for sure. And when we worked on the ship, we wanted that ship to be seaworthy. And the one ship that I worked on especially and knew all the crew, well, I worried about it.
With typical American optimism, Hope fought fear with a can-do spirit.
Even gave my baby bed to the war effort because it was iron. They felt like that if it was going to help anybody come home, they'd give what they had.
The youth of the 40s gave much. What they gained from World War II shaped future generations. When we come back, World War II, The Awakening, continues on Heartland Tonight. This is Sutherland Heights in Knoxville. It was built, like many other neighborhoods, to house the swells of World War II returning veterans and their families. Young people eager to get on with life. But they had been changed by 4 years of war's upheaval. Examples of their homecoming and the conclusion of World War II, The Awakening.
We were no longer irresponsible college kids.
Cleo O'Neill's carefree UT classmates had new ambitions.
Of course, they had the GI Bill, and the ones that were pulled out of the university came back. It was really funny, but they came back as different people, absolutely different grown-up people. By that time, they wanted an education to get a job.
The advances that African American soldiers had made in the war did not carry back to the segregated schools in their homeland.
I wanted to go to college. I wanted to become an engineer. I wanted to be an engineer. I couldn't do it in Knoxville.
Why?
What was I going to school? Knoxville College didn't have no courses in engineering. Fisk didn't. Tennessee State didn't. You wouldn't let me in, you'd see.
Corporal Melvin Valentine returned to the janitor's job he'd left at Alcoa. It was bitterly frustrating for a veteran of the Army's 1st Overseas Black Tank Battalion.
So one day they had me cutting coal samples, anthracite coal samples, for testing. I could do all the work preparing the samples except doing the chemical analysis. They didn't think I was, qualified to do that. But I thought I could learn to do it. But then they made no preparation to teach me. So I blew my top. So I went into the boss's office and told him where to take this job. I could have been fired. But I guess I told him, I said, well, I've been over there fighting for you guys. I said, I think I should have come back to something better than this. Fire me or give me something better. And for 2 or 3 days, I didn't do anything. We both were sitting there waiting to see what the other one was going to do.
What happened?
Well, we finally got a little promotion.
Recognition for pioneering military service came years later in a citation from President Jimmy Carter. As the war effort eased, Dorothy Kiggins headed back to Lenore City. War bonds she'd bought while working in the Seattle shipyards built the house she lives in still.
I would never have had it working at Grubbs for $12 a week.
Luther Woods recalls his homecoming.
I rode a bus up to where you turn down to Sharps Chapel and walked 7 miles from there to home down that valley. They didn't know it was coming. They had no telephones. They didn't have no cars nor nothing to come and get you. I just walked home. It was good to see the house that you'd left, knowing what all you'd been through and how many houses you'd seen destroyed, and come back home and you're still standing. They could see me coming for half a mile down the road, and they was all running to me.
Lon's coming.
I was kind of nervous, I'd say, maybe, I don't know. My daddy was as big a one to help me as anybody. You didn't want to keep that on your mind, what you'd went through and all you'd seen go on. And that's why I went to work on the farm, so I could get out there by myself and plow and everything, get away from everybody and just clear my mind of all this stuff I'd been through with. I knew what I'd done. I knew what I didn't do. I helped win the war and I come back home. That's what I done. And there wasn't nothing to brag about, only just you was proud that it was over.
America's youth of the 1940s suffered a staggering loss of their numbers. That alone changed them. Those who remain turn the page. What they carry through their lives and accomplishments is a quiet, abiding sense of what it means to sacrifice self and pull together for a common cause. To that generation who sacrificed their youth, picked up and carried on, a nation and its future generations are forever in your debt. Thanks for watching Heartland Tonight.